Okay. Let's get started. So, not so many people today, huh? So I guess today is the perfect day to do a attendance check, but I forgot to do that. So 2 announcements. First, quiz 1 scores have been posted, so you can check your score on Blackboard. And lab assignment 1 is due this coming Sunday midnight. And I got some complaint that the last step of this, the last task of this lab assignment is too difficult, too complicated. So, but I checked Blackboard. There have been like 20 submissions, so a lot of students already finished that. So it's not fair for us to give you any instruction at this moment because it would not be fair to those who already submit the lab report. So what we're going to do is we are going to give some more detailed instructions after the due time. So after that, you still have 2 days to finish the lab assignment. But for each day a lab assignment is late, 20% deduction will be assessed. So if you choose to wait for more detailed instructions, you have to accept this term. So you have 2 days after that. So late submission after 2 days will not be accepted. Sure.
Could you just resubmit it? If you do post instruction, you had to do the last test, and you just make changes and then resubmit it again.
So you're not confident what you did there?
Well, you're assuming that the 20 people have got that last problem right.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
but
they just submitted it without doing it correctly.
this is a hard question.
There's just 20 people in here who like solved it like no problem.
Well, I think.
There's like an Ask Ubuntu thread on the discussion board that I use. It's pretty straightforward.
I think we have varying levels that we came in with skill sets, and so maybe the ones that also submitted as well already had the basic network administration skill sets to figure out what was going on with the issue, where some of the other students might not.
So what you're saying is it's not fair to have that 20% deduction there?
That's actually what I'm saying.
Or allow them to
I'm saying for the novices that are trying to learn that came to the class because there weren't the prerequisite of network admin class, that
Well, that
this
does,
would be exploiting that.
that does make sense.
And I mean, for the record, I've turned it in. So
Yes. Well, I will think about it. I will discuss with the TA. So the final decision we will post on Blackboard. We'll try to be fair to everyone, and because I want you guys to learn something besides the lecture, but I realize many of you do not expect to learn much besides the lecture. You think everything in the lab assignment I should cover in the class. So I will think about that. We will be fair to everyone. Okay. So last class, we discussed DH key agreement protocol, and which is the first practical algorithm for establishing a shared key over an unsecured communication channel. So we will start with reviewing this protocol again and to say what kind of problem it has, and we will move to public key algorithms. So in a DH key agreement protocol, Alice and Bob, they want to exchange some keys, so later they can use this key for symmetric encryption algorithms. So first, Alice and Bob will negotiate 2 values, P and G, and P and G are public. Everyone on the network, they can know these 2 values. Then Alice will generate a random number A, which she should keep secret, and compute X, which is G to the 8th power modulo P, and Bob will do the same thing, generate a secret number B, and calculate this Y, which is G to the Bth power modulo P. And X and Y here are sent over to Alice and Bob, so they can be they can be listened by anyone on this network. They are public. So then Alice can compute the key, which is the message she received from Bob, y to the ath power modulo p, and Bob will do the same thing. And even though those two equations are different, they are equivalent. And K is the secret key that is shared between Alice and Bob after this. So after this, Alice and Bob can use this key to use a symmetric key encryption algorithm to encrypt their further communications. So since A and B, they are private to Alice and Bob respectively, and in some literature it is called the private keys, and X, Y are called the public keys. However, you will say later, this definition is not exactly the same. Private key and public key definition in public key crypto system, because we are not directly using A, B, or X, Y to encrypt or decrypt message. So this protocol, the DH protocol, they cannot be used to encrypt and decrypt messages directly. So we are going to talk about the first attack in this class. We are going to use man-in-the-middle attack to attack this DH algorithm. So what is man-in-the-middle attack? It is a type of attack that a malicious actor inserts himself into a conversation between two parties. And the attacker will impersonate both parties and gains access to the information that two parties were trying to send to each other. So to pull off this man-in-the-middle attack, the malicious actor must have the ability to intercept messages between these two actors, and also the attacker should have the ability to send and receive data meant for someone else. So let's see how it works on this DH protocol. Still, Alice tries to negotiate a secret key with Bob, and they will first negotiate G and P, and those are public. So Eve, who is the attacker here, she will sit in the middle, and Alice will generate A, like what she's supposed to do in the original DH protocol. Generate A and send X, and Alice will intercept this message. Eve will intercept this message. Alice doesn't know this message is intercepted by Eve. She thinks this message is delivered to Bob. However, Eve intercepts this, and Eve will do the same thing as Alice does. She will generate a random number and compute E1 and send this E1 to Bob. And Bob will think, oh, this E1 is coming from Alice, but actually came from Eve. Then Bob will follow his steps, generate a random number, send Y back to Eve. Of course, he believes he is sending this to Alice. Then Bob will calculate this K1 using the message got from Eve, and Alice will calculate this K1. So at this step, Eve and Bob, they share a key, but Bob believes he is sharing a key with Alice. Then Eve will generate another number, D, and compute E2, and E2 is sent to Alice. And Alice will use E2 to compute K2. So there are actually two DH protocol negotiation here. Alice is negotiating with Eve, and Bob is also negotiating with Eve. However, both of them believe, they thought they are negotiating with each other. So Eve sit in the middle, will use K2 to communicate with Alice, and will use K1 to communicate with Bob. So this is how a man-in-the-middle attack works on the DH protocol. So any idea how to solve this? Yeah.
When the connection check that you're using the same encryption key? I mean, you could do that.
No, they're using two different encryption keys.
No, but they both know what their encryption keys are, so if they check while they're...
Yes, but so if they compare that,
Yes.
how do they compare that? They need another secure channel to compare it.
Do they?
Because if you don't use a secure channel to compare that, Eve can also intercept that, right?
Eve usually isn't changing the messages and things.
So one way to solve this problem is before Alice and Bob exchange the keys, they authenticate each other. All the messages here, everything like X, Y, sent by Alice or Eve is authenticated. So this is the security objective authenticity we discussed before. So in the protocols like in TLS, they are actually have some authentication there before this key exchange. But for us to understand how this authentication, how to maintain authenticity, we have to learn public key crypto first. So let's first review how symmetric or secret key crypto system works. Alice has this plain text, use this key to, and the encryption algorithm to encrypt the plain text, and the ciphertext is transmitted to Bob, and Bob will use the same key to decrypt this message. And so we can have a dumpster, yeah, that's another theory. It's called dumpster chamfer somehow. I was thinking about that. So Diffie-Hellman protocol to negotiate a key, and the problem is there might be man-in-the-middle attack. So this Diffie-Hellman protocol was first proposed in this 1976 paper, but in this paper actually they suggest something even bigger than this protocol. They suggested the public key crypto system. Even though they failed to find an algorithm, public key algorithm in that paper, they suggested how this could be possible, how we can make this possible. So this is their original imagination, how this asymmetric key crypto system or public key crypto system should work. So Alice still wants to have some secure communication with Bob. She first has some plain text, then she will encrypt this plain text with Bob's public key. Since this is Bob's public key, everyone has access to this key. Then the output will be ciphertext, which is transferred to Bob. And Bob will use his own private key to decrypt this message. So the difference between asymmetric crypto and symmetric crypto is the keys are using for encryption and decryption, they are actually different. And we use the public key of Bob, the receiver, to encrypt. So everyone who wants to send me a message will use my public key to encrypt that message. But only I, because only I have that private key, only I can decrypt that. So if we put this in the formula, we have ciphertext, which is an encryption with the public key of the receiver and plain text. And the decryption, we're using private key and ciphertext. So in order to use this public key crypto system, everyone who wants to receive anything, they should have two keys, a public key and a private key. And a message can be encrypted with a public key and decrypted with a private key. So this can provide confidentiality. However, there is another very, very important application of public key crypto system is if we use private key to encrypt the message and everyone else use a public key to decrypt that, we can verify that this message is actually from me because only I have the private key to encrypt that. So that is called a digital signature. We will talk about that in a moment. Let's focus on the confidentiality for now. So in the original paper, 1976 paper, Diffie and Hellman, they envision that if we have some trapdoor one-way functions, so we can build this public key crypto system. However, they couldn't find a trapdoor one-way function. So what is trapdoor one-way function? First, let's take a look at what is one-way function. So the most functions we know they are invertible. So for any function f, taking x as input, which gets y, there is another function can be easily computed, take y as input and get x. For example, the symmetric key algorithms, there are many S tables, P tables, and if we treat the S table as a function, it can be easily inverted. Calculating the S table in the right and the reverse order, they only cost the same computational power. So if a function is easy to compute in one direction, but hard to compute in the other direction, this function is called a one-way function. Obviously, it's still possible to reverse it, but it's just computationally hard. So if you want to know what does it mean for computationally hard, I think you have been taking the theory of computation class. So that class covers what is computational hard. So here you only need to remember it's difficult. I'll give you one example. So P and Q are two very large primes. So it's very easy for you to compute n, which is P times Q. This is very fast. However, if we only give you n, it's very difficult to find P and Q, which are the two primes. So this problem is called the factorization problem. And this is a one-way function because this way is easy and this way is difficult. So one-way function is not enough for us to build a public key crypto system. But trapdoor one-way function is. So what is trapdoor one-way function? So first, trapdoor one-way function is one-way function. And those functions can be easily inverted with an additional piece of knowledge. So you can see here, this additional piece of knowledge could be our private key. So encryption is easy. Decryption without key is hard. But decryption with the key, it's like the trapdoor. It can be easily computed. So our public key encryption is based on the existence of this trapdoor one-way function. Here is another example. You are familiar with this function. This is a function we used in DH protocol. So why this is a trapdoor one-way function? So given any x, any k, and n, it's very easy to compute y. However, if you are only given y, k, and n, it's very difficult to compute this x. So if for attackers, without any clue, without the key, it's very hard for them to compute this. However, centuries ago, someone proved in mathematics that this function has a trapdoor there. So if we have a k prime such that k times k prime equals to 1 modular this phi n, we can easily compute x. So in order to understand this, actually you need a basic knowledge of number theory. We're not going to cover that. So what you can learn from this is it is important for us to have this trapdoor one-way function. So in 1976, Diffie-Hellman proposed this public key system, and they proposed a trapdoor one-way function, but they failed to find one. Then 2 years later, 3 young computer scientists at MIT, Rivest, Shamir, and Adelman, they actually find the first public key algorithm. So this is a picture in the 1980s, and 20 years later, they got a Turing Award for this work. And they also had a company called RSA, named after them, named after this algorithm. So RSA right now is part of EMC. It's a very important security company. So how does this work? So the first step in any public key crypto system is the receiver, you need a pair of keys. So you need to generate public key and private key for yourself as a receiver. So Alice wants to send Bob a message that only Bob can decrypt. So Bob will generate a key pair as follows. First, Bob will choose two very large prime numbers, more than 1,000 bits, so it's large. Then Bob will compute n, which is p times q. So this is the first problem we discussed there. Even though n is easy to calculate, but if you only have n, it's very hard to calculate what is p and q. Then they will calculate z, which is p minus 1 times q minus 1. So this is the step to construct the trapdoor. So then they will choose a e that has no common factor as z. So z is this number and e is this number. Then d can be computed like e times d minus 1 is exactly divisible by z. So in other words, e times d modulo z equals to 1. And the public key for Bob is this e, and the private key for Bob is d. So Bob is going to broadcast, this is my public key e. If you want to communicate with me in a secure way, you should use this e to encrypt your message. And I will use the private key d to decrypt this. So how the encryption and the decryption actually work? So for anyone in this network, they know what is n, which is public, and they also know what is e for Bob. So, but they don't know d, which is private to Bob. So Alice wants to encrypt a message, let's say m. So here we have to treat this message as an integer. Then the encryption works this way: m to the east power modulo n, we get the ciphertext x. And this x will be transmitted to Bob. Then Bob will encrypt it with the message received x to the east power modulo n and get the plain text m. Sure.
Can we go over an example with actual numbers?
We will have an example later. Okay. So mathematically, this is correct. So here is an example. So Bob, who is the receiver, he will choose two prime numbers, 5 and 7. So here, to show this example, we're using very small numbers. And then n is 35. So in this case, z is 5 minus 1 times 7 minus 1, which is 24. And Bob will choose the public key as 5 because 5 and z are relative primes. However, there are many ways to choose this e, but it's not very important because this one is public anyway. So in this case, Bob will choose e. Then Bob will calculate what is d. So this is a decryption key of Bob, and this is a public key. So when Alice wants to encrypt this, she has to treat the message as integers. So first we have a letter L, then we treat it as number 12, let's say that. Then Alice will calculate m to the east power, which is a large number. Then we'll calculate the ciphertext, which is 17. Then Alice will transmit this to Bob. And when Bob receives this, Bob will calculate with his own private key, which is d here, and calculate C to the D power, which is this huge number. So if you see these huge numbers and compare with what we learned in symmetric key algorithm, it will be easy for you to understand why public key cryptos, they are all slow. To calculate this number, it takes time. Then Bob will calculate this message, which is L. So in this case, Alice is using a different key to encrypt this, and Bob is using another key to decrypt this. So if you remember, in the symmetric key crypto system, we treat the plain text as bits or a group of bits. However, in this asymmetric system, we treat them as integers. We need to use number theory to compute them. That is also why the public key algorithms, they are much slower. So they are not here to replace symmetric keys. They are here to complement each other. So far we have been talking about confidentiality. We talk about how to encrypt message, decrypt message, so attackers cannot retrieve the encrypted message. However, there are many other security objectives, for example, authenticity, which ensures that a message or transaction is from the source it claims to be from. So we showed an example before in the symmetric key crypto system. So Eve works in a company a few hours per month, and her payment is very low, and she's smart. She can intercept the message from her company to the bank. Even though those messages are encrypted, Eve can intercept this message and replace the block that includes the salary of Eve with a higher salary from Adam. So we talked about that if we are using ECB mode, Eve can actually pull off this kind of attack. But there is another way. So the way to defeat this, we said, is we can use CBC mode, cipher feedback mode to defeat this. However, there's another way to defeat this is, so what if every message from Eve's company to the bank is authenticated? So the bank knows this message is definitely from the company. It's not from any attacker. It's not from Eve. So in that case, we can also achieve security. So authenticity in this case is breached, and if we can achieve authenticity, we can also achieve the security. So in order to do that, we are going to learn a concept called digital signature. So digital signature is a scheme to demonstrate the authenticity of a message or document. So how to use this? We are going to use the public key crypto system, but we are not using the original way. We will use the private key to encrypt a message instead of using the public key. So if Bob encrypts a message with his private key, and everyone on the network can decrypt this message with Bob's public key. Sorry, there's a typo. So no one else can encrypt the message in the way that decrypting this message with Bob's public key gave a valid result. So this can verify that this message is actually from Bob. So Bob has authenticated himself by providing a digital signature. So this is how it works. We have Eve's company. Eve's company has this plain text about everyone's salary information. It wants to send this to the bank. And Eve's company will use the company's private key to encrypt this message, which will get the ciphertext. In this case, we call it ciphertext signature. And if obviously in this case, the signature is the same length as the plain text. Then we attach this signature to the plain text, Then we send this to the back. When back receives this, the back will try to use the company's public key to decrypt this, which will get a lot of plain text. And the back will verify if this plain text is the same as this plain text. If they match, which means this plain text has not been modified. So integrity is achieved. And also, it verifies that this message is actually sent by Eve's company, because only Eve's company can do this. So in reality, we are not using digital signature like this, because you can see it here, the signature is the same length as the plain text. So we can use something like a hash to generate a digest, but we haven't talked about hash yet. So this simple scheme also works. It's just not the optimal way. So here is a formula. We have private key, plain text. We encrypt it. We get the signature. If we decrypt with the receiver's, the sender's public key and the signature, we can get the plain text. And we verify if the plain text is the same as a signature. So in the previous example, we discussed how one message can be authenticated. So we can easily extend this to user authentication. So imagine how we do user authentication now. In most cases, we use password authentication. When you log in ASU website, you type in your username and your password, and the ASU web server will verify if your password is correct. So there is a lot of way. We don't have to type in our password, because password itself has many weaklets. So for example, the server has to store the password, and the system has to check the password, and it's also easy to guess the password. For example, ASU requires you to change your password every 3 months. But how are you going to change it? You're not going to choose another totally random password. You're going to append something at the end or change it one character, right? It's not really secure. So there is a way to do authentication without password using this public key system. First, we need to register our public key to the system. So Alice wants to log into this server. First, Alice will generate a pair of private and public keys. And Alice will upload her public key to the server. So how to do this securely? We still need some other authentication step, like password authentication, but that will be just one time. As long as you log in with your password, then you upload your public key. For the future logins, you don't need your password anymore. So the server knows Alice's public key. So when Alice wants to log in this to server, Alice will say, oh, I'm Alice. I want to be authenticated. And the server will say, encrypt this random number S with your private key, because only Alice has this private key. Then Alice will encrypt S with the private key, send it back to the server. So the server will verify by decrypting this message with the public key of Alice, which it knows, to verify if this the decryption value is the random number the server sent in the first place. Since only Alice can do this, the server knows. If it matches, the server knows, oh, this is Alice. So this is actually used in many real-world systems. So how many of you use Git and GitHub? Ooh. So if you use GitHub, you must have done this. You already upload your public key to the GitHub server. So GitHub is a web-based Git repo hosting service, and you can use it to publish your source code. You can use it for version controls. It has many other features. So the scenario here is you already have a GitHub account, which means you have a username, you have a password for that username, and you can log into the server. And you want to use GitHub to host your source code. So every time you change your source code, you will push your code to the server, so it can be shared. So every time you push your code, you need to specify your username and password like this. So here is a git push command to push the code, and it will ask, what is your username for this server? What is your password for this server? So it's not convenient for you. So what you can do is, you can push code without inputting the password each time, using the scheme we talked just now. Even though that is a simplified scheme, the philosophy is the same. So first, you need to generate a pair of keys. So you will use SSH key generation to generate a pair of RSA keys. And you can put some information like what is your email address. It will be attached with a key. So it will generate two keys. One is public, one is private. So you are supposed to keep your private key secure. Never send it over email or any other unsecure channels. And in most cases, you don't have to share your keys. What if you have two computers and you want to push code from both computers? Then you should generate another pair of keys on that computer and also upload that key to your GitHub. So after you generate the keys, you will upload your public key to GitHub. For you to do that, you first need to log in GitHub with your username and password, and there is a page called adding SSH keys. So you just paste that public key here. This is secure because public key is supposed to be open. Everyone can have it. So if you put it there, it doesn't matter. So this is how GitHub uses digital signature to authenticate you, and you don't have to use a password. So the next class, we're going to talk about what is hash, what is MAC, and we will also talk about what is a problem in the public key crypto system and PKI. So hopefully after that we can start attacking the network protocols. Yeah.
I think when the students send me emails about lab, like they send me emails saying they don't have labs in their lab, put them to Yuli.
Okay, then you need to. Well, still you need to follow up, right? You need to follow. Okay. You need to follow.